I'm Dr. Richard Cunningham, and I wanted to talk about there's a bit of tension between biblical scholars on the one hand and apologists on the other. I myself am a biblical scholar and went to university, trained, and the thing is, the difference between biblical scholars and apologists are that biblical scholars are historians and apologists want to try to prove or defend the gospel, defend the Christian faith. That's what apology actually means, is to defend. So the historian tries to come at any text to put as much as their biases aside as they can. Now, can they do it totally? No. But they do try to put as much as they can aside without coming to the text with an agenda. That's different from an apologist. An apologist wants to use history to make its case, to argue for the truth of the gospel or the truth of the Christian faith. Scholars of the Bible tend not to like apologists using them or kind of crowding into their turf, if you will, into history. Because as biblical scholars, they see themselves as historians and they want apologists to stay in their lane, as it were. And they see apologists as fudging the numbers, so to speak, oftentimes because they have prior commitments. They say, first and foremost, above all else, this truth claim I am faithful to. I will prioritize, is another word we use, prioritize the truth of the gospel. Whereas the biblical scholar says, well, I want to find out what the text would have most likely meant in its original context. And see, we start here to have a difference, a kind of friction. Biblical scholars deal in probability, what is the most likely thing to have happened, while apologists want to prove the truth of the gospel, the truth of the Christian religion. And those two things aren't really compatible, at least to do at the same time, and to legitimately and transparently to do at the same time. Because when you're dealing in probability, likelihood, you really can't speak in truth. Historians, hate to say it, can never say this happened or this really didn't happen. There is no way they can say that. And if they do, they're not being historians at that point. Historians can never say definitively, yes, the Napoleonic Wars happened, or no, it didn't. What they can say is, I assign a very high degree of probability that the Napoleonic Wars happened, or I assign a very low probability that it happened for X, Y, and Z reasons, and those reasons would be considered evidence. Now, apologists are different. Apologists start with the truth and then work backwards. They start with their premise and say, okay, the Christian faith is true. Now, where can I gather my evidence for this? And here we have the difference between inductive reasoning and deductive reasoning. And those are important distinctions. And I'm not saying that one is more legitimate than the other, but what I am saying is that apologetics fits into having their conclusion first. They always have their conclusion first. And then they go seek evidence, where historians can do that, or they can start with the evidence and then go try to come to a conclusion. Both are legitimate, but the main thing here is that apologists are painted into a corner to only use one kind of argumentation. Here's the crux of the matter. Apologists want the academic legitimacy that the historians have. However, when all is said and done, the historians can't provide the truth that the apologists want. They can only speak in probability. So even when they try to use the historian, the biblical scholar, as a handmaiden to their apologetic agenda, they really can't serve them that well, because they can only talk in what is most likely, what probably happened. The odds are, more likely than not. Those are phrases that the historian uses all the time, whereas the apologist wants to speak in black and white truths. Because the apologist isn't satisfied with, well, yeah, Christianity is probably the most likely of all the religions, to be true. Yeah, I guess apologist doesn't want that. Apologist wants to defend the faith. And I think that is a perfectly legit exercise and endeavor. It absolutely is. And the academics and biblical scholars that say that it isn't are completely wrong. They're probably talking past each other though. Where it is perfectly legit for apologists to exercise their craft is in the church, because they're defending the church. They're defending people in the church. Where biblical scholars, oftentimes biblical scholars and apologists butt heads, is when apologists pass themselves off as biblical scholars, or that they're functioning within the academic realm. They're not functioning in the academic realm. They're approaching the field with their mind made up already. And that is kind of antithetical to what we do in academia. It's a perfectly legit endeavor, apologetics. It's just that it's legit in the church. Just like preaching. A historian should never say, oh, preaching's illegitimate. No, it's just, you don't do that in this realm, you do it in that realm. You don't do it in the academy, you do it in the church. When biblical scholars and apologists butt heads, oftentimes they're talking past each other. Another reason why they sometimes don't get along is that biblical scholars are either former apologists and they've quote unquote seen the error of their ways, or they still are apologists and they're trying to gather up as much evidence and legitimacy as biblical scholars when they have an apologetic agenda. This also causes tension, and it's very difficult for some scholars to really peel away their apologetic tendencies or their apologetic agenda from their biblical scholarly agenda. And when those lines get blurred and certain biblical scholars start making apologetic assumptions, that's when a lot of scholars start to clash and they do not get along. So I just wanted to take this quick opportunity to kind of pull the curtain back to show you how some biblical scholars feel about apologetics. They are not a fan because they see apologetics as trying to pass themselves off as legitimate biblical scholarship. And some biblical scholars love it because they are apologists. So I hope that muddied the waters for you, and I'll see you in the next one.